What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video, I'm giving my thoughts on the new Sundered Doctrine dungeon. For context, I've completed it over a dozen times already, beat it on contest mode, and also done the master version. Normally, I would like to wait until I had the raid exotic catalyst done, because if it's anything like Buried Bloodline, then we will see some cool new secrets in the dungeon yet. But for me, the gameplay is king, and secrets are fun, but they don't really move the needle for me on what I like about a dungeon. And unlike Destiny, I don't want to time gate my content. And lots of people have been asking for my thoughts on stream, so I want to give you all my thoughts in one concise video. Oh, and one more thing. I may only have a dozen clears, but I've spent countless hours testing strats and builds on all the encounters, and I already have over a day spent in the dungeon in less than a week. Your boy works hard to bring you good content, so go watch my solo flawless guide. That was basically 5 days of work compiled into one video. It took a ton of time and effort, and I guarantee you will learn something to help you clear the dungeon more efficiently or get the solo flawless emblem. Anyways, with that long preamble out of the way, I want to talk about all the things I like and dislike about the new Sundered Doctrine dungeon. First, let's start with something I love. I absolutely love the environmental design. I'm a big fan of the Vow of the Disciple raid, so going back to Ralk's Pyramid was a lot of fun. The dead worm god carcasses sprinkled throughout are super cool. The traversal is really fun, especially with the Indiana Jones spike ball section. Everything about this dungeon just oozes personality. It's a fantastic art design as always. I think the only dungeon where I don't love the environment and theming is Spire the Watcher, but I'm a known Vex hater. So yeah, the environment of this dungeon is top tier. Another thing that I think is the best in the game is the mechanics, but this is a double-edged sword as I will get to, but the mechanics directly tying to the lore is absolutely top tier encounter design. Having to decipher truths in the first encounter, and then the truth and the lie in the final encounter. It's just so damn cool. It's probably the coolest dungeon mechanic we've ever gotten. I am working on a dungeon tier list, and I praise Duality and Grasp of Avarice for this same thing, for having mechanics that tie in so well back to the story of the dungeon. I love it when they do this. But in something like Spire the Watcher, it's just connecting the dots. It's totally disconnected from anything. But the mechanics in Sundered Doctrine are probably the best in Destiny 2 out of any dungeon. Truly S tier. And still with the mechanics, the encounter design of the Zoetic lock set is just too good. I always say player agency is so important in Destiny, and this encounter literally lets you choose how you want to play it. It's like a Goosebumps create your own adventure. You can do a quick burst damage type damage phase, or a super long and sustained damage phase, or anything in between. Granted, on contest you didn't have this luxury, but that is a one-time thing for 48 hours, and then you can run this encounter literally however you want in the future. It's just awesome. So yeah, I love the encounter design, I love the theming. How about some not so positive things? Shortly after Warlord's Ruin came out, I made a video calling it a masterpiece, and to this day, I still think it's the greatest dungeon in Destiny. As I said, for me, the gameplay is king, and what that dungeon gets bang on is its pacing. You start with a very short traversal into a high octane boss fight with quick damage phases. Then you have a long traversal through a maze and up a castle. But what the level designers did so well in that dungeon is they don't make it feel long. You are constantly navigating the corridors through the maze or ascending on ice pillars towards the castle. Then you have the ogre boss with a very long damage phase, and then you have more traversal, but it's always varied and different, so it always feels fun and engaging rather than long. And then you have the final boss, which can have quick or short damage phases depending on how things go. All of this adds up to the most well-paced dungeon in the game, which never feels boring. Now let's contrast this with Sundered Doctrine. You have a short traversal with some hidden corridors, which is cool, and then you get to the first encounter. This encounter has 4 rooms, and you have to solve a riddle on the dial in the center of the room. For the first phase, you have to connect the lenses to a dial in one of the rooms, and then 2, and then 3. And this is the part of the dungeon that I absolutely hate. I'm primarily a solo player, and this encounter drags on forever for me. It usually takes me 15 to 20 minutes. What I hate about it is the RNG. Bungie has said that they are adding more RNG elements to the game. You have Banes and Nightfalls, and now we have random mechanics in dungeons. I do not like this. Yes, other dungeons have this to a degree, but it has been tasteful and well balanced. This is egregious, mostly from a solo perspective. Yes, I know if you know the lore, you can just figure out the symbol without needing to kill the bat, but even then, you may get unlucky when running to the room as you don't know the symbols in each room and they change each time. In Duality on the Vault encounter, you never know if you were going to Sun, Dog, Axes, or Chalice, but they were at least in the same place every time. So you still had to adapt on the fly, but there was predictability. Where with this one, there is no predictability. So as a solo, this encounter feels like a slog. Ghost of the Deep final boss is the same way. The lead up to damage is just way too freaking long and boring. Run here, run there. Same with this encounter. In Ghosts in a fire team, this is much less of an issue, and same with this dungeon. But again, dungeons are supposed to be fun solo experiences, and this is not. And when the best players in the entire world are taking over an hour to solo the dungeon, that is a problem. You have a pacing issue. You could make this encounter so much better in one of two ways. The first way is keep the randomness, but only have to do the final 3 lenses. So you wouldn't know any room symbols, and you have to kill at least 2 truth teller bats to get your symbols so you know where to send the lenses. Then the lore junkies could figure out the third without needing a bat, saving some time. And this would still incentivize you to learn the best lens pathing. Or you keep the room symbols the same every time so there's some predictability. That way when you do run around like an idiot for what feels like forever looking for the bat, you can get the symbol and then you at least know which room you're going to. For me, I think the best option would be to do the first change. Just have the 3 lens placement. It's the same thing with Ghosts of the Deep. Why do you do the opening area 4 times? It should be 3 times. There are 3 Hive Guardians, an Arc Lightning Wizard, a Void Sentinel Knight, and a Solar Hunter Acolyte. You should kill 1 of each and dunk the runes and be done. Doing it 4 times needlessly drags out the encounter and makes running the dungeon a boring slog. Plus, it's just not fun going back and forth all the time. It just gets repetitive and boring. Seriously, I know it's only a few minutes, but you're missing the point. It isn't engaging. That is where Warlord's Ruin gets it right. Even the traversal sections are engaging. Following some green goo and running around to 4 different rooms back and forth is not engaging. When I was trying to do my solo flawless, I died the most on first encounter because I'm just bored out of my mind by the end. I'm not having any fun. Same with Ghosts of the Deep final boss. The real challenge is not the combat, but it's staying focused while you're bored out of your fucking mind. The raid and dungeon teams do an amazing job in this game, but whoever is out there artificially lengthening the encounters just because needs to be fired. It's stupid and not fun. Seriously, what playtester at Bungie soloed this dungeon and was like, yep, 15 to 20 minutes for the first encounter solo feels right. Ship it. Like, nah dude, it feels like shit. I hate how some game designers think that longer is better. I platinumed Astrobot recently in about 20 hours and I enjoyed every second of that game. Same with Super Mario Wonder. Short but sweet. Even in Destiny, Shattered Throne and Prophecy have quite good pacing. They never feel dragged out. And again, I know I could optimize my lens placements and this and that, but this is an opinion video and I like to kill enemies in this game, not run around from room to room looking at symbols. But I've never been much of a mechanics guy, hence why I've always liked doing solo GMs and dungeons rather than raids. And speaking of that, I am a bit concerned at the direction dungeon mechanics are taking. A lot of people called Vesper's Host a mini raid, and I agree to an extent, but the mechanics weren't overly complex. But this dungeon, I think they overdid it. And I know I said that the mechanics themselves are the coolest they've ever made, and I stand by that, but I also think that this dungeon is a little too mechanic heavy. I have another video talking about the contest mode, but it boils down to the challenge was just doing the mechanics and not the actual combat. Where Vesper's Host was very challenging combat-wise on contest, but this dungeon was just a joke even on contest after you knew what to do. Like seriously, I didn't get to play day 1, so I was running it on the Saturday after contest had released, and I ran it with my 2 buddies who beat it on Friday, and we beat the final boss on my first attempt. So yeah, I would like to see the first encounter just get rid of the first and second lens drops and just do the final 3. I know I will get more efficient in the future and strats will come about, but it doesn't change the fundamental design of the encounter, which is run around constantly and kill a few ads along the way. It's boring. But speaking of killing ads, this brings me to a positive aspect of the dungeon. We got our first Dread dungeon, so now we have a dungeon with every faction, and the enemies they chose for this dungeon were perfect. Yes, the attendants, weavers, and husks are super annoying, but they are designed to be like that. And they are placed in ways for them to be as annoying as possible. So props to Bungie on the ad spawns throughout the dungeon as a whole. Well done. On that note, this is another problem with the dungeon. I think they have become like mini raids for one simple reason. Power creep. We are too damn strong now. So the only way Bungie can slow us down is to literally slow us with attendants and weavers who hamper our movement, or put up increasingly complex mechanics for us to solve. Like I said, I'm a combat guy and I've always preferred dungeons to raids because they were more focused on combat difficulty than they were with solving mechanics. But now thanks to power creep, Bungie just has to resort to this so that we don't blow through it in an hour on contest. And that brings me to the Zoetic lock set. Funnily enough, the first encounter takes me about as long to solo as the second encounter, but when I do second encounter, I am so much more focused and engaged and enjoying my time in the dungeon, because you're basically always fighting enemies and then every so often you go and dunk some knowledge. The mechanics take a back seat to the combat, and then you are rewarded for optimizing your damage, again something I love about dungeons. You should get quicker clears for being good at killing enemies and bosses, not for doing mechanics efficiently. Save that shit for raids. Give us combat lovers something to enjoy. Sure, I don't love the RNG nature of the wheels, as I got kill in the third slot twice in a row on my solo flawless, but it sure was satisfying overcoming that bad RNG and beating the encounter anyways. It feels great to execute on your plan even when the game is working against you. And I love how you can dictate exactly how you want to play that encounter. You are in control. And if you lose control, it can be very punishing. But again, it rewards you for controlling the encounter, and I like that. It rewards you for optimizing it. The first encounter does too, but in a I know all the best lens placements and all the truth codes kind of way, where Zoetic Lockset rewards you for being good in combat. Which I know I've said at least like 5 times, but yeah, that's my kind of dopamine. So yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of this encounter. I'm not, however, a fan of the bugs on this boss. Crit damage doesn't work, surges don't work, ignitions and unravel don't work, I don't think volatile or jolt works. A lot is fucked up with this encounter, which is a damn shame because it's cool as hell and really, it's more engaging than the final boss fight. So hopefully they can get this sorted out. It really sucks how they introduced Rainix in Vesper's Host and it broke the game and then they had to rework it and now it's just a shitty encounter because it's not balanced properly. And then they give us another super cool and unique boss fight, and again, it's littered with technical issues. How about we start launching things when they are ready from now on? Okay, cool. On to the final boss. This is a pretty neat fight too. Again, you can save yourself lots of time for knowing the truths and the lies, and then you burn the lies away to melt the boss's shield and do damage. Again, just an excellent use of mechanics tying in with the lore of the game. Very cool. I also like shining the lenses on things. I think it's a super cool design. At the end of the first encounter, when they all shine to the middle plate and open the door, that is one of the coolest animations in the game. I just love it. But yeah, the final boss is quite boring. Once you know where to damage from, it is just a case of standing there and dealing damage. It's not super dynamic. And my friends and I even tried things like Lament, but the boss is quite janky. So you are actually rewarded for just using safe spots. I guess Vesper's Host was like that to a degree, but I really like the chaotic boss fight on Vesper when you're being aggressive and taking out all the enemies while still getting in boss damage. Sure, you can just sit on a tanker in a Well of Radiance, but I don't think the encounter was really designed like that. But this boss fight doesn't really allow for that as much. However, the boss encounter itself is pretty cool nonetheless, with the 3 rooms and the symbols and such, and the threadlings coming out at you being super threatening on contest was a nice touch. And again, the enemy placements to be as annoying and threatening as possible is quite nice. One wrong pull or slow and it can be game over, so kudos to Bungie. Anyways, for all the people who wanted to know my thoughts on the dungeon, there they are. I think this is a pretty terrible dungeon for solo players, but in a team it's a pretty good time. The loot is also quite good and fun, so that's a nice bonus. Overall, it's pretty solid because really, dungeons in Destiny 2 are probably the best content we have. I just wish First Encounter was way shorter. But that's about it. Let me know down below what you think of Sundered Doctrine, as I'm genuinely curious. Like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Hey, if you're still here, then thanks so much for watching to the end. If you like what I do and you want to support me further, then consider becoming a channel member. You'll get your name featured on the end screen, custom badges, and other cool rewards. You can also join my community Discord if that interests you, and if you want to see me stream, be sure to follow me on Twitch at itstizzle7 where I stream semi-regularly. Those are linked in the description. Anyways, that's enough self-promotion. Thanks for watching. Take care.